The moral hypocrisy of the alien abduction phenomenon. This is extremely important if you consider yourself to be a critical thinker. How should we interpret the phenomenon of alien abductions? What are they really? Are they really extraterrestrials abducting and experimenting on humans? Or is it something far worse? We're going to take a look at that. And stay for the whole video because I'm going to go through some very important points to help you understand from a critical thinking perspective what is really going on. So, welcome to the Thunder Wizard YouTube channel. This is the official gathering place for all 5D starseeds and light workers. The best way to look at this subject, as all others in our world, is to question your reality and then change it. ThunderWizard.com is the website that supports this channel. It has resources for you that you will not find anywhere else. Go to ThunderWizard.com and subscribe at the various levels to get these powerful teachings, or go to the shop and you can get videos and instructional courses there. My books are also very important. I've written 2 books on my extensive experiences as an ET experiencer. You can get my books at michaelwilliamdenny.com. If you want to support this channel directly, you can go to support.thunderwizard.com, follow the instructions there. All right, so the moral hypocrisy of alien abductions. And how is it that there is a moral hypocrisy and many people still believe that beings that abduct humans are somehow spiritual beings? There's beliefs that there are good aliens and bad aliens. There are some people on the channel, you're probably listening to me right now because you like to communicate with me. This is the frustrating part. You come onto my channel, you watch my videos, you leave comments, but you haven't actually researched my material. I've got 2 books talking extensively about what extraterrestrials are, my experiences with them. I talk about it all the time, and yet people still come on here and they'll say, I believe that there are morally neutral aliens, there are good aliens and bad aliens, I believe this, I believe that. And so I don't know why you're here. I want to know the truth more than I want to know anything else. Just because I have an emotional reaction to something doesn't mean it's true. And most humans, if they have an emotional reaction to something, that's good enough for them. That's true for them. But your emotions are not an accurate litmus test for reality. I'm not saying to deny them. Your emotions are often very right. Your instincts are often very right. But you are able to be manipulated and deceived if all you do is operate from your emotions. If all you do is make judgments based on your emotional reaction. I'm a human being like anybody else. How do I know this? I'm old enough, I've been around long enough to have gone through those stages to know, oh, that's not the best way to interact with reality. So I strongly encourage people to look into critical thinking. I've got videos on this channel about critical thinking, and there are some rules about it. And the first one is, if anybody, including me, if anybody is trying to tell you that something is a fact, they very likely have an emotional agenda, meaning they have an emotional attachment to their belief, which is why they want you to know what they're thinking and feeling. And so everybody has an emotional agenda, including you, including me. There is nobody on the planet who doesn't have an emotional agenda. The only difference is, are they aware of their emotional agendas, and have they thoroughly tested them? Have they thoroughly tested themselves and their beliefs? Most people don't do this. So the first thing to know is that everybody, including you, has an emotional agenda about their beliefs. Second question to ask is, when is something true and when is something false? When is something 100% true and 100% false? For instance, if I said that human beings have 7 heads and 10 arms, is that 100% true or 100% false? You would be able to say, humans, that is 100% false. Humans don't have that. What if I said that humans have only one eye? Is that 100% true or 100% false? Well, then you go to the next question. When is something partially true and partially false? It is true. There are people who only have one eye. Either they were born with only one or they had an eye taken out in an accident or something. So sometimes that's true and sometimes it's false. And when is something partially true and partially false? You have to be able to look at this and ask these things. And the main thing about this is to know that your emotions by themselves are not a good indicator of anything. So how can somebody buy into the moral hypocrisy of alien abductions? They're not thinking critically. So what happens when people are put in a situation where they instinctively do not think critically? They are usually in a state of trauma. They are in a state where they are afraid for their life. And so they are seeking for the one thing that will give them safety. And interestingly enough, false beliefs oftentimes give people irrational feelings of safety. All right, so be ruthless with yourself. I am going to address some of you who have left comments on my channel, and you can't take it personally. If you know how to think critically, you don't have to defend yourself. We all have unconscious emotional attachments. You know, when if you go to somebody and you say, you know, you are unconsciously aggressive, or you know, you are deluded about this. If they say, I am not unconsciously aggressive, I am not deluded, that means that they're not being critically, they're not thinking critically. If somebody comes to me and says that I'm deluded, the only real answer, true answer I can give is I can say, well, if I am deluded, I'm not aware of it. Based on my perception of myself, I don't think I'm deluded. But nobody can say that. Nobody can respond to any, if somebody says you're deceived, nobody can say to anybody, well, I am not deceived. I absolutely know the truth. They can say, if that's true, I'm not aware of it. That's the only true thing anybody can say. This is how the unconscious mind works. So be willing to be wrong. If you've watched my channel, I am willing to be wrong. And when I'm wrong, I tell you. I am not attached to any of my experiences or beliefs about extraterrestrials. I'm not attached to any of that. I am happy to be wrong about any of it. So I encourage you to have that same experience, because more than likely, if you have not had extensive experience with extraterrestrials, there is a real chance that you have been deceived either by other people's misinformation, whether it's sincere or otherwise, or by your own misunderstandings, especially when it comes to extraterrestrials. All right, so let's get into it. So how to accurately investigate the ET phenomenon. So first, let's talk about spiritualizing abuse, which is also known as the Stockholm Syndrome. What is the Stockholm Syndrome? The Stockholm Syndrome is when somebody gets abducted. Their abusers, what was that? There was a really famous rich woman in the 70s that was abducted by the Symbionese Liberation Army. Patty Hearst. You're probably too young to know who she was, but she was the poster child of Stockholm syndrome. She had been abducted by some terrorist group, and she was left inside of a closet, like locked in a closet for, I don't know, weeks or months or something like that. And so later on, I don't know how long it was, months or maybe even years later, I don't know. All of a sudden, she shows up on the news, and she's holding, an AK-47, robbing a bank with these terrorists. And people are like, "What is going on here?" And what ended up happening was that she suffered from Stockholm syndrome, which is, in order to survive the abuse, you spiritualize, you identify with your abductors. Because then you say, no, I'm part of you, we're friends, and I love you, we're a family. And then you turn that into, you really love them, and you connect with them. And you actually convince yourself that you are part of them so that you can survive. When the reality is that you're being abused, psychologically tortured, and this is just a self-defense mechanism. So I see this when it comes to alien abductions. The aliens that we've been, now let me be clear. My experience with extraterrestrials is so completely opposite from everything I believed extraterrestrials to be. For, over 50 years of my life, I believed like everybody else. I believed that extraterrestrians were these aliens that came and were studying Earth, were studying humans, and needed human DNA to help save their species and all that kind of stuff. All the stuff that you hear about when people talk about aliens, greys, abductions, when they talk about even, what do you call those things? Anunnakis. By the way, it's a complete misunderstanding of ancient Sumerian mythology. But, all of that understanding, I felt the same way. So it's not like I've always had this understanding about ETs and aliens that I do now. The only reason I have the experience I have is because I've had extensive personal and physical, as well as spiritual, connection with these beings. And that is what changed my understanding. But up until my first interaction with this guy who came in and said I was a probability, until that happened, I had the same understanding of extraterrestrials as everybody else. So I'm not judging anybody. I may sound like I'm belittling you for being wrong. I'm not. I have an emotional agenda to change your mind and show you what I believe to be the truth. So know that I understand why you think what you think. People want to respond and say things like, here's one of my favorites. When I say that ETs never abduct, and that is actually a psyop, it's a deception. People will say, that's not possible. Look at all of the people that have been abducted. Do you realize how extensive the network would be to pull off that kind of deception? And I go, yeah, I do. That's one of my favorite responses. So it couldn't possibly not be true. There's so much information out there that says this is what aliens are. But the spiritualization of it, people have spiritualized alien abductions. And I'm going to get into that. I did as well. I read, I saw all the movies. I read the books. I read Whitley Strieber's, at least 2 or 3 of his books, way back in the 80s and 90s. And I bought into the spiritualization of these very abusive experiences. And there's the hypocrisy. So ETs do not have a separate morality. So if a human being showed up in some kind of flying craft and came to your home and without your permission put you in a state of paralysis, used some kind of tractor beam to pull you up into the sky into their flying machine, strapped you down onto some gurney and experimented on you, anally probed you, took your sexual genetic material, and without your permission used it to create some kind of abomination hybrid, and then put you back, implanted you with some kind of tracking device, and then put you back into your bed and tried to wipe your memory, giving you missing time. If a human being did that, it would be, without question, abusive. Would there be any argument about that? If I described a human being doing that to somebody, would you spiritualize that and turn that into something beautiful? No, you would, unless there's something wrong with you, you would go, that is horrible. Human beings should never violate other human beings' boundaries and should never do anything physically to them, should never put, against your will, you should never be communicated with telepathically or otherwise. None of that should ever be allowed to happen. It is absolutely immoral. It is wrong. So then why is it okay for aliens to do it? Oh, well, they have a different morality. Oh, they're higher civilization, Well, they're different beings. They're a different species. They think differently than us. Oh no, they know more than us. They're spiritual. If they're so spiritual, then why the hell do they have to literally abduct you against your will, rape you, and assault you, steal information from you, steal your genetic information? What is moral about that? Why is that okay? There's nothing okay about it. So we've got, right off the bat, people want to say that ETs have a separate morality. So I'm here to give you the assumption, you can believe it or not, that the alien abduction events are a psyop. The alien invasion. We are being told this. We are being acclimatized to this. So here's how a psyop works, right? So we have like 3 or 4 main ET whistleblowers. Luis Elizondo, David Grush. There's another guy that you see all the time, and he's sort of in the background. And these 3 people are people who claim to have been part of the military, claim to have been part of, like the CIA and intelligence. They claim to be ex-military. And yet they're going around saying, I left. Luis Elizondo very proudly says that he resigned, and he told them why he resigned. And then he goes on to mainstream media, he goes on to podcasts, and he starts telling people, about this alien retrieval program. And, but then he hints, he doesn't come out and say it like aliens are invading and they're a threat. He doesn't say that, because you have to get acclimatized to that idea. So first he meets you at the level of, you wanting to believe that you want to know the truth. So he paints himself as an outsider, as a whistleblower. And he hints at all this knowledge and hints that he knows that there are events and phenomenon that we don't, like a straight lie. He will lie to your face, and he will show you a video of a Tic Tac and say that we don't have that technology, which is a lie. So he'll say that, you believe him, you go, we don't have that technology, and then he throws out the hint that this could be this could be a danger to our security, to our military security, to our personal security. He doesn't come out and say that, but he sort of hints at it, so that you start to get that feeling. Now, if you get acclimatized to that after a while, when he comes out and says aliens are invading, they want to destroy the earth, you've been acclimatized to believe it. This is a psyop. It's a psychological manipulation. It's designed to get you to believe something that you wouldn't normally believe. So the alien abduction phenomenon is part of this alien invasion psyop. It's a lie. One of the ways to get you to be acclimatized to the idea of alien invasions is to spiritualize alien abductions. To get you to feel comfortable with the idea that, okay, well, they're aliens, they're more advanced than us, they're more spiritual than us. It's okay that they do that. It's okay that they're completely violating, our rights and our privacy on all levels. It's okay that they do it. I'm quoting from Whitley Strieber's book. I can't remember which one it was. It might have been Communion. I don't remember. It may have been another one where he was being abducted and he was in a state of trauma. I may be conflating two different experiences, but there have been times he was abducted and he was screaming at the top of his lungs. He was absolutely in a state of complete, total terror and trauma. And at some point in one of these things, he says to his abductor, he says, "You don't have the right." And the alien responds and says, "We do have the right." That is, if that was a human, and he was saying to another human, "You don't have the right," we would agree with him. And if the human turned around and said, "I do have the right," we would go, that is a psychopathic, completely narcissistic, sociopathic abuser. That is absolutely crazy to think you have the right to violate somebody else's, to put somebody in that state of terror. Nobody has the right to do that. Nobody. So again, the idea that aliens have the right to do that, but humans don't. And what does Whitley Strieber do? We're going to talk about it. He is one of the biggest spiritualizers of abuse, because he goes around writing books, making movies, and lecturing all over the place, telling people it's okay to be abducted. It's okay that they do that. They have a higher purpose. I'll talk more about him later. Now, I don't have anything against him personally. I read his books. I found him to be very incredibly intelligent and very perceptive and wise in all kinds of ways. And I found him to be a spiritually inclined person. And I allowed myself to spiritualize the whole abduction scenario as I read his books and watched his movies. I allowed myself to do that. It frightened me. It bothered me. I didn't like the idea of it. But I let his experience and his persuasion persuade me that it was actually a spiritual thing and it was good. Now that I've had extensive experiences with actual extraterrestrials, I know that he's been deceived, even though I believe he's sincere. So I'm not calling him a liar by any means. He's been abused, and he is actually, in my opinion, he is a victim of the, what do we call that? The Stockholm Syndrome. Let's keep going. So conflation between real ETs and psyop aliens. All right, so somebody just left me a comment. Again, somebody sincere on my channel. I don't have anything against them. I'm grateful that they're here. They're wanting to contribute to the discussion. They're wanting to give something beautiful to the discussion. And this person suggested that we read a book called UFO of God by, I've got him listed here, Chris Bledsoe. So that sounds great. It starts off by saying that aliens are actually angels and they're messengers of God. I like that. That's my experience. First guy that showed up said, "You are a probability," and started telling me about, how we are all connected to each other, we're connected to God. So that message on that surface sounds good. But then when you go and just read the description of his book, you find out that he was abducted and he experienced missing time. He was chased by aliens. And then, so the moment you hear abduction, missing time, those two things you already know, that is not extraterrestrials. And I recommend everybody go, and if by the way, anybody who believes that they are a ufologist or believes that they have an interest in UFOs or extraterrestrials, and if you have not thoroughly scoured Dr. Stephen Greer's website, you can't call yourself a ufologist. I'm not even saying that you have to believe his versions of any of it, but you can't say that you want to know the truth about it and you haven't taken somebody who has more documents and more information and over 750 actual whistleblowers. If you haven't thoroughly scoured that information, you cannot look me in the face and tell me that you are committed ufologist, you're committed to understanding the ET phenomenon. And there are no shortage of people who go to UFO conferences, who read UFO books, who tell me to read books about UFOs, and I know they haven't thoroughly investigated it, because I'm not the only person saying that. Dr. Stephen Greer says that, and I agree with him. And the only reason I agree with him is because my experience mirrors 100% his experience. That extraterrestrials never abduct. They never do anything to violate your boundaries. And there isn't some, convenient moral hypocrisy. This comes, by the way, we've been trained this from our monotheist religions, where the same thing, I was told this, for decades in Christianity. As a kid, you were told, don't think for yourself. Do not lean upon your own understanding. Why is it that God told Moses and Joshua to go in and wipe out and kill innocent men, women, children, and animals? God has his own purposes. We can't judge God. Why not? If I can't do that, if I did that, that would be wrong, right? Oh, yes, murder is wrong. Oh, but it was okay for Moses? Well, yeah, so God, it was different. God told him to do it. It's the same scenario. Believing that aliens can do this to you is the same as saying it's okay to go kill your neighbor because God told you to do it. Moral hypocrisy. So, sincere but deceived UFOs, abductees, we've already started. I talked a little bit about Whitley Strieber. Let me continue with him. Now, let me be clear. I am not calling Whitley Strieber a liar. I do not believe, my experience of Whitley Strieber is that he is a very moral person, and he is absolutely sincere, and he is telling you the truth of his experience. So I don't believe that he's lying. I don't know the man, but based on what I've read and what I've experienced, I would trust him with my grandkid. Hey, will you watch my grandkid? Here, can you hold on to my car keys? I would trust him. He seems very trusting, a trustable, kind, moral person. But that doesn't mean that he's right about the ET phenomenon. His interpretation of his experience, unfortunately, in my opinion, is inaccurate. I believe he's been deceived. I believe that he was a target of a long, drawn-out psyop, that he has been MK Ultra. And I'll give you a couple of examples. So obviously what happened is that when I first, if you look back, if you haven't watched my video on my channel in the aliens folder, and it's called How I Became an Extraterrestrial, and you'll find out what my first extraterrestrial experience was with this gentleman right here. You'll find out exactly what that was. And why did I get on that? I forgot. Where was I going on Anyway, so up until that point, I believed everything that Whitley Strieber had told me, because he's very smart and very sincere and extremely good at explaining things, and he had laid out a reality that I thought I believed. So when I reached out to extraterrestrials, I was frightened out of my mind. And in that video, you can hear me on the verge of tears, telling this alien, I'm afraid. I'm afraid. And I was saying that because I was so afraid. It was literally the most frightening experience. I've only had another experience that was comparable to that, and that was when I was in the presence of a Sasquatch. That was also a spiritual experience, and I was frightened out of my mind. I was frightened on every level when I was interacting with this being for the first time. And that is because I had been trained to believe that these aliens do things like abduct you and take you onto ships, plus the idea that there really was such a thing as an extraterrestrial. I mean, that was something I couldn't conceive of. It was beyond my, I could intellectually conceive of it, but to actually believe it was real and I was in the physical presence of one, it was absolutely, beyond my understanding. So I was frightened because of the unknown. I was the most fear I've ever experienced in my life. But I was willing to go beyond it. So that is why you hear me say, as I'm struggling not to fall to my knees and sob uncontrollably, you can hear me say, I'm frightened. I'm frightened. I was telling this being, I am afraid. And I want to continue with this. Don't let my fear stop this interaction. That's important, by the way. You can do that when if you're one of those people that are afraid of ETs, you can tell them that you're afraid. So your fear won't drive them away. But if you respond from fear, that will drive them away. That's the other thing. This is another thing that is a proof that aliens, ETs, never abduct. Because if you operate from fear, or if you operate from violence or anger, they will depart immediately. There are people who have had experiences, and these are the real experiences. One guy talked about, and a few people have said this, where they've had an experience where an orb will appear, or a ship will appear, or even some kind of extraterrestrial being will begin to manifest, and they will do things like flip them off or yell at them or throw things at them, and they just immediately disappear. The moment that you tell them to go away, they leave. Does that sound like somebody that would abduct you? Because according to Whitley Strieber, he said to them, you have no right. And they said, we do have a right. That isn't the same beings that I've interacted with. Now, you might come to the conclusion there are good aliens and bad aliens. But if you read my book, and please, people, there's so many people on my channel that haven't bothered to research the material I've given. So if you go to, at the bottom there, michaelwilliamdenny.com, I have 2 books where I explain to you in detail, not only my experiences, but I tell you exactly why, according to physics, it is impossible for a higher dimensional being to do anything harmful to you. It is physically, meaning the science of physics, it is impossible. And this is not something that Whitley Strieber believes. He believes that it's possible for a higher dimensional being to violate your boundaries and put you to knowingly continue to put you in a state of trauma, and even when you ask them to stop, they won't. One of the most heartbreaking things, and you can see this if you go watch Communion. You'll see it portrayed where his son, this is the saddest part, he had to live raising his son for years knowing that his son was being repeatedly accosted, abducted, and abused in ways that we may not even know. MK Ultra for sure, in my opinion. And his little son says, I prayed to God to have them stop, and God didn't stop them. That mindset is not anything people should experience, except that's what happens when you're being abused. That's child abuse, period. End of story. Why is that okay? There's nothing okay about it. So even if what he says is true, if what he says is true and aliens are doing this, then I'm going to go along with the people and say we need to go to war with these beings. They're psychopathic, abusive liars and manipulators. They have no moral compass. So the other thing you learn very quickly is that extraterrestrials are not different from us. They might look different than we do. They might be in a different dimension, so their energy is very powerful and different. But in terms of what is morally true for you is morally true for them. They feel the same way you do. So you could be, a lot of people will say, oh, they're different, they think differently, they're from a different planet, they're a different species. That assumes that their soul either doesn't exist or is different than yours. And that is an understandable mistake, but it's not true. Their soul is identical to yours. In fact, there is no difference between you and this mantis being, except for the fact that his soul, which is identical to yours, incarnated in a different physical form. That's it. You incarnated into this monkey form. You know, we got these monkey ears. And he incarnated in that insectoid. I mean, I don't understand what it's like to live in that kind of a body, but I can tell you his soul is no different than mine. So if you believe that aliens exist and they abduct and they do things to you, you have to unconsciously believe that they're somehow different, that their soul is different, that their mind is different, and they're not. It's the same. Consciousness is the same throughout the universe. You know, your dog and your cat aren't as smart as you, but they love you, and you know what it's like. You can feel their love. They love you. You guys communicate. They can't speak English. Their brain doesn't function the same, but it's not like they're a completely different being. You know, you go down the ladder and then finally get to beings that don't have any real consciousness and they don't have any emotional connection. But we find this is true with all animals. All conscious beings have the same structure. So to believe in alien abduction means that you believe this completely, totally anomalous experience that, well, if they came from another world, consciousness must be different. It's not. Whoops, where am I? All right, so Whitley Strieber. So I gave you a couple of, let me give you a couple more things that he's said lately that has been very, again, I'm not calling him a liar. I'm not calling him an evil person. I believe that he is telling the truth as he understands it. I disagree with the conclusion that he's come to. I believe that he's part of a unacknowledged human program, a psyop, which is designed to set you up for what is happening now with the drones and the orbs and all of that stuff. One word for it has the word beam in it. A certain color of beam. But that's not accurate. Just call it the fake alien invasion is good enough. It's a psyop. So Whitley Strieber. So not too long ago, this had to have been a year, maybe 2 years ago at the most. He came up on my YouTube feed and he had some podcast interview with somebody. It might have been on his channel. And the title of it is, What is the Deep State? Now at that time, it had to have been close to 2 years ago because I was still learning about my experiences and I still kind of wanted to believe that Whitley Strieber was hooked up to true understanding. And so I wanted to hear his understanding because I was just coming into the understanding, even believing the concept of the deep state. So I was very interested to hear what he had to say. And what he said actually was so shocking to me that I came to the conclusion that he had been psychologically manipulated, that he's been, he's been MK Ultra. And what he said was his ultimate conclusion was that the deep state basically was God. He didn't use those words, but that's, and how he came to that conclusion, I'm like, how is he getting this conclusion? But he basically kind of said that the deep state is actually a spiritual force underneath the cosmos and the universe that is guiding all of us. The deep state? I mean, it was clearly taking the idea of that there were deceptive people behind the elected government officials who were actually running things and had, evil intent for their own selfishness. How you go from that to the deep state is God, I don't know how he came to that conclusion. Again, I'm not using the words accurately. This is the way, the feeling that I remember of what he said. So I'm not claiming he used those words of that quote, but that was the feeling. And that was like shocking to me. I was like, what? Clearly, this very intelligent, critical thinker was just not thinking clearly at all. And it sounded like propaganda. And I was shocked at that. Most recently, he did an interview on a podcast that I had been interviewed on, which was the Jeff Mara podcast. You can go watch it. I tried watching it. And I was looking to see if he was going to give out this false propaganda, him believing it to be true, but him, speaking this false propaganda about, fake alien abductions, etc. And what I heard him say absolutely, again, horrified me. And it just showed me the extent of how deep this horrific program is, alien abduction program. He talked about how he had been implanted, I believe. He was talking about something in his ear, and I gathered he was talking about he had been implanted by aliens, by the Greys, as he calls them. And he then started talking about how he could see text in his eyeball. Like he'd be looking at the white wall, and he can see this text going by faster than he could process. And at one point he asked and said, "Who are you?" And the text slowed down, and the text came across his eye and said, "It's me." And then his dead spouse, I forget her name. "It's me, your dead spouse." And he rightly said, now that doesn't mean that's true, but that's what they want me to believe. So he's right there saying that there's a possibility that they're lying to him while, pumping his brain full of all of this text, right? He's out there saying that the Greys have implanted him with something that is putting text into his brain and he can see it. He then went on to say that that interface he was having helped him write his new book. So he just had a book that his most recent book has come out, was written by him, and whatever AI was being transmitted into his brain, according to him, from Greys, aliens. He then went on to prove that this is a psyop, without even, again, no critical thinking involved whatsoever. He then went on to say he started volunteering out of nowhere, as he's trying to explain to Jeff Mara what was going on. Out of nowhere, he volunteers and says, "And I got a phone call from a CIA doctor who told me to go get an MRI or something in my ear." So just stop there. That doesn't ring any problem. That's not a problem for you, that a CIA doctor is telling you to go get your implant checked? He then responded to the CIA doctor, and he says, "Why would I do that? No hospital's going to want to do an MRI on my ear or whatever. Might not have been an MRI, some other kind of scan of his ear." And the doctor says, "Don't worry, I'll take care of it." Hangs up, and sometime later, I suppose that day, he gets a phone call from the hospital saying, "Come in tomorrow morning, and your procedure's been So the CIA is going, what are they doing? I can only imagine they're checking to see if their implant is working. And this whole time he's so completely psychologically manipulated to believe that it's aliens who are abusive and lying to him, according to him, doing things to him and his child against their will. And he's spiritualizing it so much so that he writes books based on what this implant is telling him. So this is an example of somebody whom I believe is sincere but deceived. And unfortunately, these people are in the majority out there. Linda Moulton Howe. So Linda Moulton Howe is also a sincere but deceived. She's not an abductee as far as I know. She's a ufologist. Now, Linda Moulton Howe is an investigative reporter. And she's been studying the UFO alien phenomenon probably for about as long as I've been alive. For a very long time. And so she is looked upon as an expert. Now, she has no shortage of information that she has received from, again, military whistleblowers. So you have to ask the question, how is it that people like Luis Elizondo, David Grush, how is it that they are able to supposedly, tell the truth, be a whistleblower about top secret military information, so much so that they're able to write books, able to go on to podcasts, able to go on mainstream news media and go against what they've been told to do, supposedly threatening these top secret military programs? How are they able to do that and not end up face down floating in some ditch somewhere? How is that possible? I mean, how is it we don't go, how is he able to talk so freely about it? He was part of the CIA, he was part of some secret intelligence operation. He's able to walk around saying, "I know the truth, they're lying to you, and here's what they're doing. They're doing a UFO retrieval program, and I have information on it, and I want to share it with you." How is it that his head is still attached to his body? Why do people not even ask that question? Anyway, so Linda Moulton Howe gets her information from these kind of people and has throughout her history. And so she's very attached to the idea of a lot of this stuff. She believes that aliens are working with our government. If I understand, I don't know if this for a fact, I've gathered, I believe I've heard her say things along the lines of there are good aliens and bad aliens and evil aliens and all that kind of stuff. And she comes across as though she's a whistleblower of the deep state that's lying to you about aliens, etc. But again, she gets her information from ex-military. To my knowledge, I don't know if she's had a personal experience with ETs or not. I don't know. I haven't heard her talk about that. Maybe she has, maybe she hasn't. But let me share with you one story she told me, which is absolutely telling, completely reveals what is really going on with where she's getting her information. So according to her, she was talking to some ex-military guy who was a private, the lowest rank. I don't know if it was, I'm assuming it was the Army. And according to her, and I'm going off of memory here, so I'm not quoting exactly, but I'm going to give you an accurate rendition of the story that she told. So according to her, this guy was telling her about, that our government is working with aliens, that they have a relationship with aliens and nobody knows about it. And so he's giving her the scoop on all of this. Now, I don't know if this guy was a source of misinformation or if he himself was telling the truth of his experience, which is very possible. Many of the, not the whistleblowers, but, people from the Air Force who go in front of Congress and say they saw some UFO that defied all of their understanding of our current technology, they're telling the truth. They don't know that those ships that they're seeing flying around are actually made by humans. And we've had this ability for almost 100 years to make these kinds of vehicles. You just don't know about it. They don't know that, so they're saying, I saw a UFO, I've never seen a plane that can do that, so you automatically assume, well, it must be alien. But that's an assumption. You don't know that. He doesn't have to know about every, top secret vehicle out there. So, again, critical thinking has to be used. And that shows a lack of critical thinking. And again, it's part of the psyop. So this, I'm going to assume he's a sincere private. He goes to her and he, meets with her in secret, and he tells her about this experience that he has, proving that our military is working with extraterrestrials. So he tells this story about how he's been given an opportunity. He had to choose to volunteer or not. And his commanding officer came to him and said, we've got this assignment. You can accept it or not, but if you want to do it, if you choose to do it, you will personally interact with an alien. And it's going to be so massively strange and powerful that it might be physically damaging to you, it might kill you. And so you have to volunteer, and he decides he's going to volunteer. This is how I remember it. So here's the scenario. Bear in mind, the assumption is that this guy is going to meet an alien that has the technology to fly thousands or hundreds of light years across space to come to Earth. Okay, so just hold that in mind. This is who he's supposedly interacting with. So the commanding officer is now prepping him and saying, okay, the alien is going to walk out of that ship. I can't remember, but I think there was a UFO, like parked on the ground somewhere. And so I could be wrong about that, but that's how I remember that part of the story. This next part, even though I might not get the words exactly, this is the chain of events. So according to him, his commanding officer tells him that an alien is going to walk out of that ship. It is going to frighten you because you've never seen anything like this. He is going to walk strangely. It's going to look clunky the way that he walks. And that is because he's used to levitating. But for you, he is going to walk, but it will look strange to you. And then he is going to telepathically send information into your brain. And we're testing to see if humans can receive information from these beings. And he said the information is going to come in a big chunk, and it's going to knock you out. It's going to make you unconscious. And so we're telling you ahead of time. So he says yes, so he agrees to do it. And sure enough, the door opens, and out comes this clunky walking alien that seems very, like he can't walk. And he stops in front of him. And then the alien telepathically sends this huge amount of telepathic information that comes into his brain, and sure enough, it knocks him flat on his ass, knocks him out. And then he wakes up and he's in a hospital bed or something like that. And then they're trying to find out, what do you remember what happened? Now, what Linda Moulton Howe wants you to believe is that aliens are testing their ability to communicate with humans. But again, let me ask you, this is a race of beings supposedly that travel from Zeta Reticuli or wherever, hundreds, thousands light years away, and they have the ability to come here, but for some reason they can't walk, and they can't control how much information they give you telepathically. What does it sound more to you like? Does it sound like that is an interaction with an actual extraterrestrial who's been alive for billions of years, who has billions of years of experience when it comes to technology and space flight and interaction with other civilizations? Does it sound like that, or does it sound like a military technological testing program to see if they can make believable aliens that will communicate telepathically? Now again, this story would have been a long time ago, would have been decades ago. So does it sound like the military was testing how to do that psyop, or does it sound like an extraterrestrial? So Linda Moulton Howe has been saying this kind of stuff for decades. And again, she's getting her information from ex-military. Got to be a little suspicious about that. Not that she's not insincere. She's telling the truth. But she hasn't done enough critical thinking to ask that question. Does this sound like an alien, or does this sound like some kind of clandestine military test? It's obvious what's really going on if you use critical thinking, if you're not emotionally attached to the outcome. All right, Chris Bledsoe. Somebody left a comment on the channel. Sincere person. And it's obvious to me that they haven't read my books or listened to a lot of my videos. I don't know if they've been on the channel a lot, but there's a lot of people that come on the channel and don't scour the information I give you. Why should you? It's just another YouTube channel. So this person says you should go check out Chris Bledsoe's book, UFO of God. Well, I haven't read that book. All I've done is I've read the excerpts that are on Amazon. And I found out by reading that according to him, he believes that aliens are messengers of God. He had some powerful experience where he was healed of some illness. Good for him. I'm glad that happened. And then he explains that he was abducted, that there was missing time, and that at some point he was chased by an alien ship or something like that. So right off the bat, I already know that it is the fake alien abduction psyop. He is a victim of military abduction and abuse, and he has been experimented on psychologically and physically. How do I know that? Because he says he was abducted, and he talks about missing time. I'm here to tell you that ETs never give you missing time. So that guy, I believe, is, unless he's a plant, unless it's just something that was made up by the psyop, I'm assuming, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt that he's being honest and sincere. It doesn't mean that he wasn't deceived. But to be on my channel and conflate the two means this is part of the psyop as well, to create confusion, so that there's confusion among people who are investigating this experience. To give you another example of the conflation between the false narrative and the real experience, and how somebody can do this and deceive themselves and at least have partial untruth, even though they're sincere. As you know, CE5, Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind protocol, was introduced by Dr. Stephen Greer, and it is human-initiated contact with extraterrestrials. And it's very simple. You go out into the desert or on the beach or something like that, or out into the who knows where, and you sit down with your camping chair, and you send out what we do every day. You imagine going out of Earth's atmosphere and sending out an invitation for extraterrestrials to come and visit you, and then you sit around with your camera and your recorder, and you wait for some ship to fly in the sky or something to happen. Right? I've done that. That's what got me started in my experience. And I did CE5 repeatedly, and it worked. So this happens all the time, but people want to be able to say, I met an alien, I experienced an alien, I saw a ship, and they conflate with the false alien narrative, psyop, that has been given out for the past 60 years. And so I was briefly part of these CE5 groups on YouTube until I found a lot of them are filled with ufologists, and a lot of them are filled with, I believe to be, deep state plants sowing misinformation and conflation and confusion, and I stopped interacting with those groups. And so one person was talking about how he was, so there's the desire to virtue signal, right? Just like Christians do. Oh my God, I love Jesus so much, and I know God is a good God. They're virtue signaling. They're showing you how good they are and how close they are to God. Well, people in the ET community can do the same thing. They virtue signal. They want to let you know how close they are to ETs and blah, blah, blah. I understand that. So this person was virtue signaling, and he was talking about how he's had an alien experience because he went out into the desert and he did CE5, and I don't know if he saw anything or didn't. And then he talks about how on the drive home, the clock did something weird and he fell asleep, and he got home faster, driving from the desert to his house, which should have taken hours, and it felt like it only took a short amount of time. And then he went to sleep and woke up the next morning, and he started talking about he had missing time. So he was trying to say that, he went out and did CE5, and therefore he had some missing time experience driving home, meaning he wanted us to think that maybe he was abducted. And so he was clearly virtue signaling, wanting people to think that he had an ET encounter, except for the problem that he doesn't understand that ETs don't give missing time and they don't abduct. And I confronted him on it. I said, ETs don't do that. What you're describing is what happens when you've been out all night and you're driving home and you're half asleep. And you get home and you fall asleep and you wake up the next day and it seemed like it didn't take that long to get home. That's not missing time. That doesn't mean you were abducted. It means that you want so badly to convince people that you had an ET experience that you're going to try and find a way to see if you can work in, because ETs abduct and give missing time. And this is somebody who does CE5, who seems to follow Dr. Greer's information, but clearly hasn't done any investigation to understand that he'll tell you. He has evidence. He has evidence that so-called alien abductions, people that have experienced it, they've, robots, that are dressed to look like ETs, and some guy fought it off and he cracked it over the head or something, or it fell, he pushed it to the ground and it fell and it broke open and a bunch of wires in there. It's a robot designed to look like an extraterrestrial. And so he didn't even know that. So it's understandable. Most humans are lazy. They don't want to do that. They have an emotional desire to have an experience and be able to talk about it. And they don't know any better. For the past 60 years, we've been told that aliens abduct and aliens create missing time and aliens implant you. And so people can do CE5 and still conflate with the false. So I encourage you to look into it. And I'm here to tell you, based on my experience, you can believe it or not, but I can speak, I believe I can speak on behalf of all extraterrestrial races. ETs never abduct. They never experiment. They never implant. They never create hybrids. They don't do that. There are beings that do that, and they're humans. And humans do have alien DNA, and they do abduct human beings and take their genetic material, and they have created abominations. And the beings that they have created through, hybridization. Those beings are in hell. They are not comfortable. It is not, and extraterrestrials have no desire to do that. They have no need to do that. The idea that they are from some other third dimensional world where their world is dying and they need no. This is programs that want to create super beings that they can use, who have telepathic abilities, have the ability they want to be able to create beings that can telepathically connect to extraterrestrial craft and draw them here. There are human beings who are at war with extraterrestrials. And so this whole alien invasion psyop, alien abduction psyop, the drones versus the orbs, this is all a lie, all of it. And it is hand in hand with what's happening in California. That is also a psyop. It's a military attack on the United States from within. That is what's happening. I hope people can wake up. I hope this video won't get taken down. All right, so I talked about how Whitley Strieber, Linda Moulton Howe, and Chris Bledsoe are sincere but deceived agents of misinformation. So your accurate ET sources, anything by Dr. Greer, I would listen to everything he says, and I am not saying that, I don't say that lightly. It means that my personal experience completely, totally vibes identically with his. And I trust his sources and I trust what he says because he's come to the same conclusion. And the facts that he brings also reveal the same conclusion that I've come to. So if you really want to know, forget about all the books, all the movies, the ufology crowd. There are so many conscious agents of misinformation all throughout the ufology crowd. I would throw it all out the window. Unless you've personally had experience, and even then, if you have experience of being abducted and being abused, I'm here to tell you that ETs didn't do it. No matter how otherworldly the experience was. Human beings have technology far beyond anything we can understand. And, if we believe that aliens could have created that technology, it means we live in the same universe we could have created it. So stop just assuming that because it's a technology beyond your understanding that it has to be extraterrestrial. It could very well be terrestrial. Pretending to be something that it isn't in order to gain, again, look at that beam. That particular color of beam, the BB. You know what I'm talking about. So the accurate ET source is Dr. Greer and my channel. Now, I don't talk from a technological perspective because that's not my focus. I talk about a spiritual perspective. And so I share with you my experiences. Am I accurate in all of my interpretations? Very likely not. But there are things that I have been told and I have been shown that have happened. And I believe that I have a strong personal relationship with my light being family. They happen to be, many of them, souls that have incarnated into different civilizations and into different species and live and interact from different dimensions. I won't get into what dimensions are, but they're beings just like you and I. I have karmic past life connections with many of them. And so if you want to learn about that, you can listen to me. You can decide whether or not I'm telling you the truth. My main goal with the live guided interdimensional meditations is to give you the experience that I have. That is my goal. I've come to understand that not everybody's going to have my experience because I've found out that I have a certain role in this shift, and everybody has their own role, and mine is mine and yours is yours. So you might not have the same experience as me, but I want you to have a powerful, personal, visceral, spiritual experience so that you won't be deceived by these things. So many people, you know who you are, you come onto the channel, you haven't done these things, and you want to talk about aliens and orbs and ETs, and you want to talk, I saw it on this channel and I saw it on that, and I already know you're not doing the work yourself. And so I encourage you to not take anybody's word for anything, including mine. Don't take my word for any of it. Find out for yourself. That can only be done through personal experience. And the best way to do that is to do the CE5 protocols, as Dr. Greer teaches it, and or do the interdimensional meditation as I teach it. That's the fastest way for you to have a personal experience and find out what is really going on, what extraterrestrials really are, and what the world is, and what the third dimension is, and what Earth is. It's time for us to go beyond this third dimensional experiment and go beyond what we think Earth is. Those days are over. Earth is being deleted as we know it. It is shifting into a whole other reality. How long that's going to take, I don't know. Whether there's going to be a single event where it transforms instantly, or whether this takes hundreds of years, I don't know. All I know is that the shift has begun and that Earth is in the process of being deleted as we know it. But I encourage you to not take my word for anything. Do the practices, do the work. That's what the 90-day challenge is about. Everything at thunderwizard.com, that's what the live guided interdimensional meditation is about. And that is what my books are about. Go to michaelwilliamdenny.com, read my 2 books about extraterrestrials and other things. Stop being on the sidelines and listening. Find out for yourself. What is happening, what's happening in Los Angeles, if we don't wake up, that is just the beginning. That's only the beginning if we don't wake up. What happened to Maui? What is happening to Los Angeles? What happened during the hurricanes? Those are just the beginning if we don't wake up. All right. That's it, my friends. Thank you all so much. I love you all. I appreciate you. If I've challenged any of you and what you've said, know that it's not coming out of a desire to criticize you or devalue you. It's just we're running out of time, and I believe people should have access to the truth. And so I'm doing my best to share that information. So I hope that's helpful for you. If you appreciate these videos, please go to thunderwizard.com and subscribe above the free level, get access to the practices, and or go to the shop at thunderwizard.com. You can purchase the videos and practices there. If you want to support me directly, you can go to support.thunderwizard.com, follow the instructions there. You can also just go below and click the $sign button and donate directly to this video. Without your support, I'm not able to keep doing this. In fact, I'm looking at side hustles because the channel is not currently bringing in enough money for me to live on. So if you want to have me spend more time doing these videos, I encourage you to support the channel and get something out of it. That's it. I love you all. Please be very good to yourselves. I will see you all very soon.